Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Hernandez, and today we're diving deep into Miami's housing challenges through the lens of an essay I read, The Housing Theory of Everything. First off, I want to give credit where it's due. The idea comes from an essay by three guys, John Myers, Sam Bowman, and Ben Southwood. Big shout out to these authors. They argue that housing isn't just one problem. It's connected to almost everything. Inequality, family life, innovation, health, climate change, you name it. Now, we're bringing that theory home to Miami. It's where we live. Think about it. From the shiny high-rises of Brickell to the quiet streets of Kendall, from upscale Coral Gables to historic little Haiti and Liberty City, housing ties all of these neighborhoods together in surprising ways. In this video, we'll explore how Miami's housing situation impacts inequality, the economy, families, health, and even climate. We'll see why housing is not just about shelter. It's about opportunity, quality of life, and the future of our city. So get comfortable in your own home, I hope, and let's uncover why fixing housing could help fix a lot of other issues. And stick around to the end. I'll share with you how you can stay informed and consider me a resource in navigating Miami's real estate. Let's jump in. So Miami is often sun and luxury on the surface, but when it comes to housing, there's a storm brewing. Home prices have soared over the past decade, nearly tripling in South Florida from 2013 to 2023. And that's great if you own property early on. Your home equity probably shot up. But it's a nightmare for many working families. Wages certainly didn't triple in that time, did they? As a result, housing affordability has plummeted and inequality is widening. Let's talk affordability. Miami now ranks as one of the least affordable housing markets in the country. Over half of Miami households are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. For renters and lower income folks, it's even worse. An incredible 90% of renters earning under $50,000 per year are paying unaffordable levels of rent. Think about that. Essentially, all renters below a moderate income are stretched too thin. And it's hitting our minority communities the hardest. Almost 48% of Black and Latino households in Miami are cost burdened, higher than other groups. Why? Largely because fewer minority families here own homes. So they're stuck renting and facing those rising rents. And you can see inequality all over the map. Take Brickell, for example. Gleaming condo towers filled with high-earning professionals or international buyers versus Liberty City, a historically Black neighborhood where income are a fraction of Brickell's. The median household income in parts of Little Haiti or Liberty City might be in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, whereas Brickell's median income is much higher. Yet housing costs everywhere have climbed. So longtime residents in Little Haiti and Liberty City find themselves struggling to keep up with rent. Many have been priced out of their own neighborhoods as new developments arrive. Meanwhile, homeowners in wealthy areas like Coral Gables or Coconut Grove have seen their property values surge, adding to their wealth. Housing has effectively turned into a wealth generator for those who have it, and a poverty trap for those who don't. In fact, over a recent 5-year period, homeowners in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach gained an average of $220,000 in equity just from price appreciation. That's a massive wealth gain that renters completely missed out on. What does this mean for Miami? Inequality. Expensive housing drives financial inequality. If you own property, you build wealth effortlessly as prices rise. If you rent, or you're trying to buy your first home, you might feel like you're chasing a moving train and falling behind. It's getting so stark that even some middle-class professionals, teachers, nurses, police, they can't even afford to live where they work. For example, a recent study found the average teacher in Miami can only afford about 0.2% of available apartments within a reasonable commute to their school, essentially almost zero. No surprise then when we hear about teacher shortages and even proposals to build teacher housing on school property. The housing affordability crisis isn't just an economic issue, it's social. It affects who can afford to live here and enjoy opportunities there. Miami is a place of opportunity for some, but not if we don't address housing. We risk becoming a playground for the rich and a struggle for everyone else. And that affordability struggle has ripple effects. It doesn't stop at individual families. It spills over into our local economy and even how innovative and dynamic Miami can be. Let's talk about that next. One of the core ideas to the housing theory of everything is that where people can afford to live ends up shaping the entire economy. If housing is scarce and expensive in areas with the best jobs, some people just won't be able to move where the opportunities are. Or if they do, they'll spend hours commuting from far-off suburbs. This has a hidden cost on productivity and innovation, something that matters a lot for a growing city like Miami that's trying to become a tech and finance hub. Miami has been hyped in recent years as the next big tech hub. With investors and startups coming in, we've seen companies and talent moving in, drawn by Florida's business climate and lifestyle. But here's the catch: housing. Those luxury condos in Brickell, they're not cheap. And many of the new jobs being created in Miami aren't high-paying tech jobs. A lot of them are in hospitality, healthcare, and services with median wages under $19 an hour. Those workers can't rent a Brickell apartment at current prices, let alone buy a home in the city. If they can't find affordable housing, they might opt to work elsewhere or spend hours commuting. Think about a restaurant or shop in Brickell or Coral Gables. If the cooks, waiters, and clerks have to drive in from Homestead or Broward County every day because they can't pay Brickell rents, some will decide it's not worth it. Businesses will then struggle to fill positions, and in extreme cases, we might see what's happened in other expensive areas. Labor shortages for essential jobs, or businesses having to pay a premium to attract workers, which can drive prices of services up for everyone. Miami's economy thrives on entrepreneurship and new ideas, but innovation tends to flourish in cities where talented people can collide, collaborate, and start ventures together. If sky-high housing costs make it hard for younger graduates or creatives to move here and share tiny apartments while they launch their next startup or arts venture, we could be stifling our own potential. A city like San Francisco learned this the hard way. Many would-be innovators simply couldn't afford to stay there. Miami doesn't want to follow that path by accident. And remember, not all innovation jobs pay like hedge funds, guys. A junior software developer or an entry-level researcher might have a solid middle-class salary, but not enough to pay themselves a $3,000 a month Brickell one-bedroom. If we force all of our up-and-coming talent to live far out in Kendall and have to commute into Brickell or even leave Miami, we lose some of the energy that drives progress. If only people who already have money or who are willing to cram 5 roommates into a condo can live in the city, then only they get the benefit of the city's best opportunities. What I'm getting at is that we're leaving a lot of human potential on the table. As Myers, Bowman, and Southwood noted, this is a global trend. This isn't just Miami. When housing is scarce in productive cities, many people are locked out of the most productive jobs and end up stuck in lower paying work elsewhere. That hurts economic growth for everyone, not just those individuals. Here in Miami, we can see hints of that. Miami-Dade is actually losing some workers because of housing costs. Recent data show that the county had a net loss of domestic residents, people moving out, even as it gained international residents. Some longtime locals, including young professionals, feel that they have to move to places like Orlando, Atlanta, or Texas, where housing is cheaper, even if they'd prefer to stay. If our nurses, police officers, or startup founders of tomorrow start saying, "I love Miami, but I just can't afford it," we have a problem. On the flip side, if we manage to improve housing affordability, the benefits to our economy could be big. It would mean more people are able to live here and participate in the job market. Businesses could hire from a deeper talent pool. We might even see higher productivity. Studies have shown that workers in bigger, well-functioning cities are more productive, partly because they can collaborate and specialize more. We want Miami to be that kind of city, drawing people in rather than pushing them out. Now, let's get a little more personal. Beyond jobs and GDP, housing hits home, literally, in our family lives. How does the cost of housing shape decisions about marriage, kids, and where do we put down roots? You might be surprised. If you're a young family in Miami, you probably know this story. You're in a small apartment in the city, maybe in Brickell or Edgewater, enjoying the urban life, but then you start thinking about having kids, and then suddenly that one-bedroom condo feels tiny. You look at the cost of upsizing to a 2-bedroom near Brickell City Center and get sticker shock. This is a common crossroads. Expensive housing often forces families to delay having children or to move further out when they do. In Miami, we see many couples moving from the urban core out to places like Kendall, Doral, or Homestead when they want to buy a larger home for a growing family. It's understandable. You can get more space for your dollar out there, but it also means longer commutes and leaving behind the convenience of city amenities. That has a cascade of effects on family life. Parents might spend 2 hours a day on traffic on the Dolphin or the Palmetto, time that could have been spent with their kids or on personal activities. The day-to-day stress can go up. What about timing and number of kids? It's not just anecdotal. High housing costs correlate with people having fewer children than they intend to, across the developed world and likely here too. Many young adults say they want, for example, 2 or 3 kids, but end up having fewer. One reason is that they simply can't afford a home big enough or stable enough for a larger family. According to research cited by our original authors, a 10% increase in housing prices can lead to a 1.3% decrease in birth rates. Now consider how much housing prices have risen in Miami. well over 10% in the past couple of years alone, and it's not hard to imagine it's having a real impact on family decisions. We also have a multi-generational twist here in South Florida. Because housing is so costly, more young adults are living with their parents longer. About 23% of Miami's millennial-aged adults live with their parents until 2022, compared to about 16% nationally. Culturally, many Hispanic and Caribbean families here are very tight-knit, so living with parents isn't unusual. But economic pressure is a big factor. If you're 28 and have a decent job but rent is sky high, staying with family might be the only viable move to save money. The upside is that you save on housing. The downside is that you might delay the independent life or starting your own family. For families that do manage to buy a home, the type of housing affects family life too. Miami's housing stock is skewed at two extremes, right? High-rise condos are single-family homes. Middle housing, like townhouses or duplexes, is relatively scarce in the city center. Some zoning codes, for example, much of Coral Gables or the T3 zones in Miami, favor single-family houses only. This can limit options for a family that wants something a bit more spacious than a condo, but can't afford a standalone house in the city. They might be effectively pushed outward geographically. All of this matters beyond just personal preference. It affects society. When people have fewer children than they desire, it contributes to an aging population over time. It can mean fewer students in our schools down the line, less vibrancy among youth. Already, Miami-Dade's population growth has slowed and even reversed in some years, and low birth rates are part of the equation, along with migration. Bottom line, housing costs are tied to major life decisions. They influence when people marry, when or if they have kids, and whether multiple generations can live together under one roof. By easing the housing crunch, making it possible to afford a two-bedroom for the kids without moving to another county, we'd be giving young Miami families more freedom to live the life they hope for. That's a quality of life win that's really hard to overstate. We've covered a lot about economics and family, but there's another connection you might not expect: housing and health. Your address can determine more about your health than you might think. Part of it is lifestyle, the environment you build around you, and part of that is the stress or relief that housing can bring. Let's start with lifestyle. Miami is a car-dependent city in many ways, and that's partly a housing story. We've spread out because housing in the core is limited or expensive, so many people in distant neighborhoods commute. In Miami-Dade, about 80% of commuters drive to work alone, while only 4% use public transit. That means a lot of time sitting behind the wheel. Contrast two scenarios: someone who lives in a dense, walkable part of Miami, say Brickell or downtown, versus someone out in a more sprawling area like West Kendall. In Brickell, you might walk to the grocery store, or walk your dog to the park, or maybe even walk or take the Metro Mover to work. In West Kendall, you're likely driving 10 to 15 minutes just to get to the nearest supermarket or to drop the kids off at school. There's not that much within walking distance. These daily habits add up. It's no coincidence that walkable cities tend to have healthier populations. For instance, New York City, America's densest, most walkable city, has about half the obesity rate of the nation as a whole. Here in Miami, our obesity rates are closer to the national average. Around 30% of adults in Miami-Dade are obese. Part of that is diet and many factors, of course. But part of that is the physical activity built into our day. When housing shortages push cities towards sprawl, people end up driving more and walking less, and that contributes to health issues like obesity and related conditions, diabetes, heart disease. There's also mental health and stress. Housing stress can be huge. The anxiety of making the rent each month or the threat of eviction if you fall behind, it takes a toll on people's well-being. Miami's rent surge in recent years has undoubtedly caused stress for thousands of families. Ever talk to someone who's facing a $400 rent increase or renewal? It's panic-inducing. Crowded living conditions, like multiple families doubling up in one house to afford rent, can also create stress and conflict, and even facilitate the spread of illness. On the flip side, stable housing is foundational for health. When people can afford to have a decent home, they're more likely to have the bandwidth to take care of other aspects of life, like cooking nutritious meals instead of working a second job, or taking kids to the park instead of being stuck in traffic. Let's not forget environmental health either. Miami has some older housing that may have issues, from hurricane damage, mold, to legacy issues like old plumbing. Lower income residents often end up in homes with environmental hazards, like a mold infestation due to poorly maintained buildings that can trigger asthma. Meanwhile, building new housing to modern codes can improve overall safety and health. New buildings are less likely to have those issues and can better withstand storms too. In short, housing policy is health policy. If we build a city where people can live closer to their jobs, and safe in modern homes, and perhaps not rely on cars for every errand, we're building a healthier city. It's not just a theory. We see it globally. Places with more compact development tend to encourage more daily physical activity. And as our original authors pointed out, the way cities are built can even be linked to things like an obesity epidemic. It's fascinating and a bit sobering, but also hopeful because it means that by fixing housing, we could also improve health outcomes. Speaking of health, we can't ignore the climate and environmental angle. Miami is ground zero for climate change impacts. How does housing connect to climate and sustainability? The link is both global, carbon emissions, and painfully local, sea level rise. Let's dive into that. Miami's fight against climate change is often framed around sea level rise, hurricanes, and heat. But housing is a part of that story too. How and where we build affects our resilience and our carbon footprint. First, the local climate change impact. Sea level rise is real. It's happening. Let it rain and brickle for 20 minutes. The water in Biscayne Bay is around 6 inches higher today than it was 30 years ago, and projections suggest we could see much more in the coming decades. This puts a lot of our housing at risk, especially in low-lying areas like Miami Beach, parts of downtown, and coastal neighborhoods, Morningside, Coconut Grove. Here's an interesting twist. Developers and investors are now eyeing the higher ground inland neighborhoods for new projects. Places like Little Haiti and Liberty City, which sit on a ridge about 10 to 20 feet above sea level. Little Haiti is about 18 feet above sea level, more than 4 times higher than Miami Beach. That elevation makes them less flood prone as seas rise, which has led to what's been dubbed climate gentrification. Essentially, wealthier folks are moving into historically poorer, higher ground communities to escape flood risk, which displaces the existing residents. In Little Haiti, for example, a mega project called Magic City is planned, a $1 billion high-rise development. Longtime Little Haiti residents have already felt the squeeze. Rents in that area have doubled for some businesses and families in just a few years. They fear being pushed out of the neighborhood their families built, all because the land under their feet became a hot commodity for its climate advantage. So the housing shortage and high prices accelerate this climate gentrification dynamic, undermining climate justice. Now, consider where new housing goes. Miami-Dade has the urban development boundary, the UDB, to prevent sprawl from eating into the Everglades. That's a good thing for the environment. But if we don't build up in areas that we already have, pressure builds to push these UDB boundaries or sprawl further west and further south. Sprawl means more cars, longer drives, and more carbon emissions. Dense housing in the city can actually be part of the climate solution. People living in a downtown high-rise tend to have a lower carbon footprint than those living in far-flung suburbs. Why? Well, they drive less, maybe they don't need 3 cars per family, maybe they use public transit or walk more, and their homes are often more energy efficient. An apartment shares walls and uses less energy for cooling than a leaky single-family house from the 1960s, for example. One study in the UK found that people outside cities had about a 50% higher carbon emission than city dwellers. I'd bet on similar patterns here. And there's also the fact that new buildings can be built to higher energy standards. Think solar panels, better insulation, hurricane or impact windows, etc. If we allow more new housing, we could replace or retrofit old buildings that are energy hogs. Miami's hot climate means a big AC bill. Newer construction can reduce that with better tech. And every older home or apartment upgraded is potentially less greenhouse gases emitted. However, if high housing costs push growth to, say, Atlanta or Houston, 2 Sunbelt cities that have boomed partly because they remain more affordable, that's actually worse for the climate because those cities are famously sprawling and car dependent. It sounds ironic, but keeping Miami affordable and building more housing here could help prevent more carbon-intensive development elsewhere. The original essay pointed out that when people fled expensive California cities for cheaper ones, it often meant moving to places with higher per person emissions. We don't want a scenario where Miamians who love their city have to move to some far suburb or another state just to afford a home that would likely increase their gasoline consumption and electricity use. Think bigger homes, more driving. In short, climate and housing are entwined, like everything else we've talked about today. We need to build in a smarter, denser, more resilient way to both accommodate people and mitigate climate impact. That means possibly reforming zoning to allow more height or density in safe areas, encouraging transit-oriented development, so new housing along the Metro Rail or the Rapid Transit Corridor, and directly addressing that climate gentrification issue by investing in those high-ground communities so current residents aren't simply pushed out. Housing policy can help ensure that our climate solutions don't leave vulnerable people behind. We've covered a lot of ground, from Brickell to Little Haiti, from the wallet in your pocket to the air that we all breathe. The big takeaway from the housing theory of everything is that housing is not a side issue. It's central. It's so central to so many challenges. Here in Miami, we see that every day. Inequality tied to who can afford to live where. Family choices shaped by housing costs. Economic growth capped or unleashed by where workers can live. Health influenced by how our neighborhoods are built. Climate resilience determined in part by where and how we build our homes. The original authors, shout out to Myers, Bowman, and Southwood, gave us a framework to understand this. And looking at Miami through that lens, it's clear we have a lot of work to do. But it's also an opportunity. If we get housing right, if we manage to build more homes, more people can afford, and in the right places, we won't just solve one problem. We'll be making progress on so many fronts at once. It's like unlocking a multiplier effect for a city's well-being. So what can we do? This is a big systemic issue, but it starts with awareness and conversations like this. Support policies that promote affordable and workforce housing, whether it's creative ideas like the Miami-Dade School District building apartments for teachers, or pushing for zoning reforms that allow duplexes and apartments in more neighborhoods while still respecting community character. Encourage our leaders to invest in housing solutions, public and private, and to cut red tape that makes construction so slow and expensive. Even small things like supporting new housing in your neighborhood when it's debated can contribute. And most importantly, we need to protect communities like Little Haiti and Liberty City from being victims of their elevation. Development should include affordable units and anti-displacement measures so that climate resilience planning benefits everyone, not just the wealthy. As we wrap up, I do want to thank you for sticking with me in this deep dive. If you found this analysis useful, follow me for more insights on Miami housing and our real estate market. My name is Daniel Hernandez, and my goal is to be a trusted resource for you, whether you're a resident worried about local housing, an investor, or a family figuring out your next move. I'm here to provide clarity on these issues without the hype. Miami's my home, and I believe in its future. By understanding these challenges and these opportunities in our housing market, we can all make better decisions and push for a positive change. So hit that subscribe or follow button for more thoughtful takes on housing and real estate. And remember, whether you're renting, buying, or just curious, you don't have to navigate this complex housing landscape alone. Consider me your go-to Miami real estate expert and your ally. Thanks again for watching, and thanks again to Myers, Bowman, and Southwood for inspiring this. I'll see you all next time.